Here for the purpose of the committee of the whole. I guess we'll do attendance.
Yeah.
Clerk Spencer, attendance, please.
Deuter.
Here.
Sabatino, absent. Leader.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Here.
York.
Here.
Toledo.
Here.
Healy, absent. Levin.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Conquest.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent, we have a quorum. On with the meeting. Any announcements from the dais? Seeing none, we'll go on to public comment. Clerk Spencer, I know, since I got this sign-in sheet, we have someone signed up.
We do. Kathleen Sullivan.
Ms. Sullivan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. During the city council meeting tonight, a person represented that they don't like tax increases, and they thought there should be an SSA with regards to flooding, and placed on the homes, it seemed like, of those who flood. As a person whose home is in an inundation zone, which is really what you talk about in your budget materials, my house stores the water for not just my home, but many other homes. And so the SSA, the reason that I think you guys put it on all the residents instead of just doing SSAs on people whose homes flood is that we're storing other people's stormwater as it is. And so really the schedules you're showing show how many homes you remove from an inundation zone, but not all the homes who benefit, because those homes benefit by me storing stormwater in my home for them. So, so I think you guys all get that, but also there's other people who watch the tape and things like that. So we just want to make sure we clarify that rumor as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know that was the only person signed up. Anyone else who did not have an opportunity? Chief Bassador, you good?
Howard's a troll.
I'm not going to ask Howard because he'd take me up on it. Okay, that's it for public comments. On to business before the committee. As the council's aware, we've been going through our operating budget for fiscal year 2016. This is our circle back meeting. Hopefully we can get it all done in one meeting. And that would be my goal tonight, hour and a half. Hope we can do that till 10:30. And then if all goes well, staff will prepare a final budget with an ordinance to be voted on and hopefully passed on the 21st. Is that right, Mr. Grabowski?
That's correct.
Okay, so this evening, we are here to discuss Circle Back. I know council, city staff has provided a lot of background information and backup information for those folks who have requested Circle Back items. If a council member wishes to change a line item, certainly it's their choice to do so. We'll handle it like we normally do with a motion and a second, have a conversation, and if that passes, staff will be able to make that correction or change before the 21st. That having been said, any questions or comments before we get started? Seeing none, let's dive right in. I know that staff provided a summary of the circle backs, and within each summary is the aldermen or aldermen, persons, who requested the circle back. I think the best way to do it is just go forward in order. See if that alderman who requested the circle back has received the information, understands the information, has any additional questions, or wishes to make any changes. Sound good? I think everyone's on board with that. So circle back number 1, it's part of CAB page 36, Alderman Bram. That was a discussion about permeable alley demonstration. Alderman Bram.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for staff for providing the information. I don't know, my only question is to see if there's any likelihood if we could get a demonstration, a permeable alley demonstration done in 2016 fiscal year, and if so, then I would like to see those dollars moved up. Right now, they're allocated to 2018, and I understand the engineering needs to go into it, as well as pursuing grant dollars. But if is there a likelihood of this moving forward anytime sooner in 2016.
Just to remind the council, this is based on, completely on us receiving a grant for something like this. While we considered putting something like this into the paving or the street alley construction project, something like this would take away significant dollars from other projects, which is why we would rely on a grant to try a project like this.
Are there any grants pending? Do you know where to go get these dollars?
We know where grants are available, and certainly we would make application for them. We don't know what the likelihood is at this point of receiving one, though.
Okay. Alderman Brand?
I understand utilizing grant dollars. I think this is just another way for Elmhurst as a whole, as a city, to be a leader. And even if grant dollars are not being able to be utilized in an instance, I think we need to consider that. I'm not saying or advocating for it today, but I think that needs to be a part of our thought process of being able to use best management practices, especially in an alley instance where, you know, it's not a road that's traveled by heavy traffic. Other than that, the information that's provided is sufficient to my needs at least, and once again, thank you to the staff.
Alderman Wagner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. The funding source starts with the CI, the capital improvement. Should it be under like FG or SG if we're waiting for a grant? It has a second part. Oh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Withdrawn.
Asked and answered by himself.
Actually, Alderman Brand.
Do that a lot.
Alderman Kennedy?
Yeah, I just, City Manager Grabowski, the project on Addison, for the parking deck, we have an area in front of that that has permeable pavers, correct?
That's correct.
We're doing a demo already, and so I think the fact that this is scheduled for 2018 gives us time to see if that project works, that part of the project works, and then determines if we want to go out in 2018 and look at this.
You're correct, and the only thing I would add is we did receive a grant, partial grant for that project as well from the county.
Alderman Brand?
Just a kind of a point of order. Is there something wrong with our microphones? It doesn't seem like it's picking up very well.
No better than normal, which is pretty bad. I've asked staff to actually look at replacing the microphones.
Pretty bad.
Motion for the budget.
I'll send it to Public Affairs, I think. Okay, Alderman Bram, circle back number one. You're satisfied, yes?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Staying with the KEB budget on page 44, Alderman Bram, you had a comment and requested additional information about the Prairie Path underpass at York Street.
Yes, sir, and this has been discussed on multiple occasions in Public Works Committee, as well as here during budget time. I guess, and the only reason why I asked this for a circle back is because we as a committee were going in the direction of following up with the Park District and I believe maybe even the county to reroute the Prairie Path in this location, or a segment of, I should say. So I'm just kind of wondering on why we continue to have such a major, large project when we already have decided to move in a different direction.
City Manager Grabowski?
Thank you. My understanding was that we were not necessarily giving up on the underpass project. However, the direction from the committee was, let's talk to the Park District to see if there's another option. And I made the decision that with all the stormwater discussions we were having, that I needed to approach that afterwards. Now that we have York Commons done and we're moving forward on the others, I think this is probably a good time for us to approach the Park District on this project.
Alderman Bram?
Yeah, the follow-up would be, even if we get these discussions in motion, there's no way we're going to get this thing started in 2016. So wouldn't it be more appropriate to, if we decide to keep it in the budget at all, to move this out of the 2016 budget and into a later fiscal year?
I guess that's the optimistic side of us, that perhaps we would leave it here. There's no harm in having it in 2016. We can always move it to 2017 in next year's budget.
Alderman Dunn.
I was just wondering, in the budget, is there any scenario planning for the alternatives that Alderman Bram speaks of? I think one of them was rerouting it at $300,000 versus this being a $2.2 million project.
As I recall, the only city money that we have budgeted right now is the Phase 1 engineering, the $150,000. The other one is in the KEB for the 5-year plan, but not programmed with any dollars. We have not put anything in the budget for alternative routing, not knowing what direction that might take. So I guess the only money that's budgeted is the Phase 1 and then the grant dollars that are sitting for us at the DuPage Mayor and Managers.
Additional comments or questions? Alderman Bram.
Is there an expiration, and please refresh my poor memory, on the grant dollars expiring?
Yes, there will be a point where they come to us and ask us if we are going to use the dollars or not.
There's no date?
It's not a hard 3 years or anything like that, but it's generally about that 3-year range. They ask me every year, is the city still interested in this project? I say, yes, we are. We're working out some details of where it might go or what partners we need. And so we've continued to tell them that until they pull it out from under us, but hopefully we'll reach resolution before that would ever happen.
Alderman Bram.
I guess at this point, I'd like to, coming into this meeting, I was actually thinking about removing this totally from the budget, but in all due respect to the process, I believe Alderman Healy, who is not available here tonight, was one that was concerned with this intersection. I would like to make a motion to defer all the budget dollars allocated to this line item to 1 year later. So shifting it to start in 2017 and going through 19 versus where it's at today.
So on page CEB 44, if I look at the expenditure schedule, you basically want to add a year to everything that's on the left-hand column.
Correct.
Before I ask for a second, technically, City Manager, are we, give me a second, let me get my dates right. On the 21st, are we technically voting to approve the 5-year capital budget?
The 1-year part that is in 2016, the 2016 budget.
Okay, all right, so it's an appropriate motion. All right, so we have a motion from Alderman Bram regarding the capital expenditure project, which is the Prairie Path underpass at York Street, to take everything on the expenditure schedule and add a year to it, or in effect, push this off 1 year. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Alderman Dunn with a second. Okay, additional conversation or discussion with regard to that motion. Alderman Levin.
If I may ask City Manager, it seems that is there any need to show the continuing commitment for having these grant dollars reserved by leaving an indication that in our 2016 budget, or the county or the granting source doesn't really care?
So if I may, to paraphrase, does it look better if we're ultimately going to do this and try to get those dollars to show the county, hey, it's in our budget, or will it affect our possibility of getting those dollars if we shift it out?
Well paraphrased.
If they ask for evidence to us supporting this, yeah, I would say yes.
In that case, I mean, I understand the reality of it maybe not being done till 2017, but all in all, I think for that reason, I would prefer to leave it in 2016.
City Manager Grabowski, the $150,000 in 2016, I assume that's engineering?
That is
And
for
would that go
Phase
through
1.
what committee? Public Works?
Public Works.
Okay.
That was up for consideration when the committee directed us to talk to the Park District about alternatives.
Okay, all right. So, but in terms of the funds that would be expended in 2016, ultimately it would go through Public Works. It would go through Public Works
Correct.
before, and we would vote on it again. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's value in leaving it in the 2016 budget. If we get to the point with the Park District where they're open to looking at this, and the county is as well, there's potential we could do the engineering work in 2016. So whether we're doing it for here or we're doing it for another way to achieve the same thing, and that's the crossing at York there, I think it stays in there and we figure it out as the year goes on.
Okay. Additional comments? Alderman Wagner.
Understanding the intergovernmental agreements for the parade path itself, I mean, if we don't come to a conclusion from either the park or the county to say, yeah, why don't you guys start use some of the engineering funds that you budgeted and take a look at it. If we don't have the agreement, what happens in 2017 with that 150? Does it just drop into it anyway?
I guess the question is, when do we bite the bullet and expend the 150,000? Is it before or after we get this agreement? Or positive feedback from the Park District or county?
I guess that's a question that I don't have an answer to, because the 150 could be used for, what we have it programmed for is to do the Phase 1 engineering so that we can apply for additional grant funds to do the underpass. Certainly, we could, if the determination is made that the underpass is the direction to go, we would immediately start working with those two agencies on agreements. So I would think we'd want to know what that engineering looks like, that Phase 1 engineering looks like, before we got too far down the road with both agencies.
Alderman Wagner.
Let me just try to rephrase it then. Do we need to have the other government bodies' approval before we actually spend the money?
No, that is city funds. The 150,000 is city funds that have been budgeted. We can use that to do the engineering if we choose.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Alderman York.
And we can use that $150,000, those funds, for engineering for any solution to the problem of crossing York Street.
That's correct.
Any other comments? Alderman Dunn.
The solution of, now you have the study that's $150,000. One of the complete projects is $300,000. So if we were to budget $150,000 for a study for the underpass concept, what is the probability or odds that we would be able to move that over to actual construction of the rerouting of the path?
Alderman, you're referring to the 150,000?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, not the grant funds. I just want to be
Right,
sure we're talking about
right.
the two distinctions. I don't know offhand what a preliminary engineering study would cost for the rerouting versus an underpass. We can come back with that number. I'm sure it's something less than 150,000 though.
Right.
So if we expend some of that on engineering, the remainder could be used for construction of that project.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments? I will call did I miss somebody? I'm gonna ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll on the vote, on the motion to basically shift the expenditure schedule by 1 year. So if you're voting for it, you're voting to turn 2016 into 2017, 2017 into 2018, and so on down the line. If you're voting against it, you're leaving the expenditure schedule as is. Clerk Spencer.
Graham,
Aye.
Dunn.
No.
Okay, we got Palumsky,
No.
York,
No.
Toledo,
No.
Healy is absent, Levin,
No.
Diddy,
No.
Conquest,
No.
Wagner,
No.
Mulliner,
No.
Deuter,
No.
Sabatino, absent, Leader,
No.
okay. So that's 1 aye, 11 nays, and 2 absent.
1 aye, 11 nays. Motion to shift the expenditure schedule fails. Any additional comments or questions as it relates to this circle back item? Seeing none, we'll move on to circle back item number 3. Page 140. Economic Development, line item 110-3015-414-10-01. I think this is about adding someone to the Economic Development. Is that, am I reading that right, Mr. Grabowski?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're looking at the first line item on the page 140, and this was something that Alderman Bram asked to circle back, along with Alderman Toludo. I know that some information was provided. Additional comments or questions?
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Levin.
It kind of goes into item C. This budget proposal, I guess I have two questions. The first one is, if this goes in the budget, is this authority for city manager to go ahead and hire, or does this go through some committee to decide if that position should be filled?
I would take this as an approval to move forward and hire somebody.
And that's what I thought you were going to say. And my question is, we've used Ken Bartels he's been sort of a leader in working with City Center, Economic Development Commission, both at the meetings and otherwise. It seems like, how do you view the role between what this person would do and what Ken Bartels is doing? Are they compatible? Does this position replace in part what Ken Bartels is doing?
Just as a clarification, Ken works with the Economic Development Commission. He does not work with City Center. He does interact with the chamber, though.
I meant interactions, not working for them.
Right, I understood that.
Right.
I understood that. But, so our main interaction is Tom Paravolo, of course, on that. So this position, at least for the time being, I don't know that we envisioned it, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, of taking over the Economic Development Commission. Ken is doing more of the big picture, leading the Economic Development Commission on more of a policy issue than it is a direct day-to-day contact with retailers and potential retailers for the city.
So is this more somewhat of a replacement for what the Fines-All component had been in the past?
Yes, exactly, correct.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you. And I'll tail off of Alderman Levin's comments. I guess, if I lay down some history, we had a full-time individual for this back in the day. We went away from that to have a contractor positions, and that being Fines-All, as well as Ken Bartels' role. So I think it was double duty there. And the reason why the council went in that direction was to save on the benefits and have this tag team of contractors, and therefore it's at a lesser charge, but accomplishing the same thing. The reason why I asked for additional detail on this is I do see overlap, and I'm just kind of trying to get a grasp on what is the difference, because when we did have a full-time individual like this defined position, business development coordinator, even though the name of the role was different back then, we didn't have an assistant city manager, and the assistant city managers, as I understand it, that role is defined primarily to handle economic development. So what we're kind of circling back to is now we have an assistant city manager primarily for economic development. We're going away from a contractor positions, or went away from one of the two contractor positions for economic development, keeping one of which, and then adding on top of it, a salary position. So we're costing ourselves more dollars to accomplish what we were doing with contractors before. So I'm just kind of curious on where is the defining role here? And as Alderman Levin stated, I think you said attachment C, which is the next item for circle backs, or item number 4 on our circle backs, they are interrelated. I think Ken Bartels' role, and I don't want to name him, but his role is primarily, or at least at the very minimum, 50% economic development focused. And now we are continuing to add to it. So where are those lines drawn? And why do we still need a consultant if we're going into the direction of hiring a full-time staff person to do that role?
If I may, Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. The economic development team is exactly that. And as I'm thinking through this, I think you can compare it a little bit to how our IT staff has grown over the years as well. We did a study a number of years ago where the director of that division was more of a hands-on person, and that person has now grown more into the bigger picture project kind of role, and that's what I would liken the assistant city manager to, in addition to the other roles that he plays, which is supervising the building department, the HR department, and the IT department. Assistant manager Kopp supervises the economic development team and is also a part of that. And in the bigger picture, when you look at the RDAs, the redevelopment agreements that we're working on, the TIF, along with the finance staff that works on that, the assistant city manager's role is not a day-to-day business recruitment role, and it was never meant to be that. We had a part-time contractor. We've since parted ways with that part-time contractor, and quite frankly had a difficult time finding a replacement for that person for filling that role. With the staff member that is doing that on a part-time basis right now, along with the clerk duties, we're finding that it's very advantageous for us to have that. We currently don't have a full-time economic development person. We have a few part-time people doing that work, but not one person that's strictly dedicated to economic development. We think that that is the best direction to go for the city in terms of recruiting and filling the vacancies throughout the town, working with the realtors, working with the brokers, working with the property owners, so that we can have a thriving economic and commercial community. Keep in mind, this was one of the main goals of our strategic plan, was to continue our economic development efforts, and we truly think that this is the best direction to go to make that happen.
Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just as a reminder, too, I think the part-time person was working 10 hours a week. I think that contractor was working 10 hours a week. In my opinion, there's nothing more important than economic development. We find ourselves, and there's no wood to knock on around here, but we find ourselves in the situation today where, I would characterize the economy as kind of, if it's not in a slow boil, it's certainly close to that. And there's a lot of opportunities out there, and I think we can all sense it when you call around to try and get some work done and nobody answers the phone, and the first guy that answers the phone, you might actually end up hiring that guy because you don't have any other options. So I think there's nothing more important than filling this position with a competent person to handle this business. And if we find ourselves in a situation where the return on investment is good, or the boil comes off the economy, we can do exactly what we did in 2009 and 2010, and we can make adjustments as needed. Unfortunately, if we miss opportunities today, it has a lifetime of bad results for the city. So I fully support this.
Alderman Bram.
You trick us when you look at one alderman and call another name. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I go back, and Alderman York made a good point. Our contractor is working 10 hours a week, and we have another part-time, as Mr. Bartels' role, working approximately the same or maybe a little bit more. So how are we justifying then a full-time position if what we thought was satisfactory before was 10 hours a week, and now we're filling it with a full-time position at 40-plus hours a week? And that's why I'm asking the question, and depending on these answers, I may not need any further discussion on the next circle back. And then my last question would be, do we have someone targeted in-house to take over this role, or is this going to be more of a larger search outside of the city of Elmhurst boundaries?
City Manager Grabowski.
I'll start with the last question first. We have someone doing it part-time right now, but I'd prefer not to discuss personnel issues out here. That's okay. Second is when that contractor was working 10 hours a month for us, that was not enough, or 10 hours a week, excuse me. That was not enough. We found, and we had discussions at the committee level, that that was not enough. However, since then, as I recall, Mr. Bartel's hours have been reduced in the last couple of budgets, mainly on that side of it. His communication side is kept up. His museum hours have kept up, but as I recall, the economic development hours have been reduced as we've gone through.
Alderman Levin.
Two follow-up questions. What, I think, is this essentially, when there was discussion of the full-time person laid off, was that the economic development director, and it was before your time, the Martha Corner position? So is this replacement position, is it at the same, intended to be at the same level, or is it more of an assistant level? 'Cause I noticed there's a different term, I don't know.
It's a different term. I did not review what that previous position was, so I can't compare the two. Mike, I would ask you to comment on that.
It's really similar to that Martha position before.
Is it similar in salary component?
Yes.
All right, that's all I have, thank you.
Alderman Toledo.
Yeah, just since I was on the circle back, I did get my questions answered. I had a question with staff, or a conversation with staff, and I do think that a couple of things that a number of folks have said are true. I think the characterization of the current economic development team in terms of cobbled together team of part-time people is, I would not characterize it as satisfactory. I would characterize it as keeping the lights on barely. And with a growing demand and growing retail space in our city, we have an increase in workload for a person in that position or a team in that position. And therefore, for both of those reasons, I support this position. Thank you.
Okay, additional comments. Alderman Mulliner.
I just want to make one comment that I support this position, but I also support making sure that we fill all of our open positions, including 3 firemen.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Deuter.
Just a question. Will this person be part of the planning group, or will this person report directly to the assistant city manager?
Report directly to Assistant City Manager.
Alderman Bram.
Yeah, there was made mention that in regards to our previous contractor, it wasn't enough. I mean, there was great debate to continue that contract. There was great debate to move that contract forward on multiple occasions because it was believed to be enough. So I guess I would just like to say I disagree
Was
with-
believed, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Was believed to be what?
I don't know, you interrupted me, threw my thought off.
Sorry, you said it was believed to be
Enough.
enough.
I heard enough.
Sorry, enough, okay.
That
I
sounds like a
didn't-
good word. So my point being is that there was a lot of debate, council, committee, et cetera, about that being the appropriate level, and we extended the contract because of that. So to hear that, you know, it was felt that it was not satisfactory or not enough or not appropriate or we weren't doing a bang-up job kind of flies counter to what the discussion was when we continued to advance that contract forward.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Dunn.
Just a quick question. Is there any overlap with this role when compared to the communication manager role? I know those topics for the past few years have been in the same matrices, communication, development, consultants. I just want to make sure I'm sure there's interface between them. I just want to make sure there's no overlap.
The more interface is on the marketing side of it. We did, when Dan Leahy became our first communication manager, we had in that job description the possibility of economic development. That it never happened. There was just too much on the communication side, the marketing side, to ever get involved in the economic development side of it. And we're seeing the same thing now with communication manager Schruff, that the communication side of it is taking quite a bit of the time. So they'll help with the marketing. So with this business development quarter, if they need help putting a brochure together, or something like that, communication manager will help do that.
Any other comments? So Alderman Toledo and Alderman Bram, all the questions, answers as it relates to that?
Yes.
We did bleed into number 4, which was on the same page, the consultant's role. Any additional comments or questions as it relates to that, Alderman Brand?
No, and it did bleed over. We essentially already extended the contract, so I think making a modification in the budget would be counterintuitive, so no other questions.
Okay. On to circle back number 5. It's on page 147. It was a request by Alderman Honquest, and I think Alderman Healy as well. And it's centered around permits, how long time permits takes, et cetera, and staffing. Alderman Honquest?
Yeah, I want to thank staff for putting together the comparables to the other cities. I don't think I really had a problem when I brought this up with 4 to 6 weeks. I know we'd had extended times. What I was kind of looking for, and I think actually Alderman Toledo came up with a good idea, was maybe the ability to break some of these apart so we could fast track them. So for instance, if a person's doing a backyard job, of some sort, that could be put in a different work stream than, say, a commercial space, which might require more city staff time, or new construction homes. So we can kind of break those out and then adjust the fees according to that. If somebody wants to come in and say, I don't want to wait a month for my backyard permit because I'm out of time or whatever, give them the option to pay more and fast track that. So I didn't really see that in there. I saw that you guys increased the rate for the new home construction, which might balance it out, which is fine. That might be that one track, but I was just commenting on the other two, maybe.
City Manager Bobrowski?
One comment, we try to do that now. When people come in with a lesser permit than a new house, we try to move that through the process quicker.
Okay.
Because it doesn't need as much review, obviously. What we tried to focus on here was the second part of your comment in terms of what Alderman Toledo had suggested in looking at some type of fast-track permit process, and we will continue to look at that, and I anticipate that we would probably put something together and bring that to a committee for discussion.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Additional comments or questions? Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. Just on the concept that it sounds like staff may be looking at of expedited permitting, I would encourage the staff to consider, I think what was suggested is pay more and get it faster. I think you can look at using an expedited permit as an incentive to get other things as well, like providing more stormwater than required puts you on a faster track. So if we're looking at the process, I'd throw that in there as well.
Okay. Good comment. Alderman Levin?
I assume this will go to one of the committees, but I just would say for the record, I'm against the Disneyland, you pay for the express ticket. If I come in and I don't want to pay more than what I'm supposed to pay for the fee, I think you start getting into, why should I have to pay more to get the service that the city's promised me? And if someone pays more, they jump ahead of me. That doesn't seem right to me. I think it was a good question. I'm glad we looked at it, and I think it's important because I didn't realize other people were hearing that things seem to get more and more delayed. But if we move back into the range of 4 weeks, maybe up to 6, that's good. I think we should be also regarded as a city that can get things turned around not only on the business side, but on the building and residential side.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Brand?
Just for the record, as Alderman Levin just stated, I agree. I think in concept, it's good to make sure we fast track, but I would hate to put dollars to the ability to fast track. So I think anything we could do from a procedure or policy perspective maybe, but mainly from a procedure perspective, to allow for fast tracking to happen, but level set and make sure everybody's on equal ground and not adding a dollar value to get that privilege.
Okay. Any other comments? Sounds like asked and answered. Yes, Mr. Honquest?
Yes.
Okay. Circle back number 6. It's page 180. It's with regard to Ride DuPage. I know it's something we participated in maybe last time, 2009, I can't remember.
We actually never participated in it. It was discussed at the city council level, at the committee level and the city council level. It was approved, but it was not implemented due to budget cutbacks.
All right. Alderman Bram, you asked staff take a second look at this.
Yes, and I think I appreciate the staff getting back with the information. I'm losing track with all these circle back items here, but making mention that it will be reviewed this upcoming year in committee. I think if we know today that we're reviewing something in committee, that we should be adding it to the budget in case we decide to move forward with it. It kind of sounds, just like I made mention of a previous circle back, it's counterproductive to know we're going to be discussing something and not have it in the budget document. Just like I said before about the consultant contracts, we already extended it, so how can I reduce it? So same concept, same parallel. I would like to understand why we wouldn't have this as a line item for at least a partial year in the budget on page 180.
We don't know what that dollar amount would be. Certainly, we could take a stab at something if that's what the council would like, but we don't know what that dollar amount is, and
Oh, I think we ballparked this during, when it was circle back, during the initial conversation. Wasn't it about 80,000, give or take? Wasn't that, Marilyn, was that your estimate at the time?
You know, I recall when we looked at this in depth before, which was about 2006, 2007, and at that time, to implement it would have been about 3 times the cost of what the program was at that time. So today, we have in the budget 85,000, actually more than that, probably closer to 90, 95,000 for both the senior program and the disabled citizens program. So I would say it's going to be at least double that, probably double that and add 50,000 more.
So when you say double that, you're talking about 170,000
yes.
plus?
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Bram?
So again, I guess I haven't heard my question answered. If we're reviewing this in committee and we know that today, why would we review it with absolutely no budget line item to cover it in case the council as a whole decides to move forward with it?
Gaston?
This could very well be a very good program for our senior residents, but it also would be a huge, huge change. The program that's in place has been in place since the late 70s. This, I would say, requires probably 3 to 4 months in analysis by staff and committee time to review it. Then there has to be a huge communication to our senior population. I would see an implementation at the earliest in the latter part of 2016, if not the early part of 2017. Just because I think there is, you can't just say, next week we're going to start this program. The registration is a huge process, the communication, getting the word out, making this happen. So I don't, even if we started January 1st with the whole process, I don't see anything happening till probably late 3rd quarter, 4th quarter of 2016. I just don't think it's warranted to increase the budget at this time.
Toledo?
If the city council chose, if this went through committee and the city council chose to approve Ride Page for, on behalf of residents in the town, and there was no budget line item specifically for this program, how would staff recommend we fund that if it was the council's desire?
I won't say it, Alderman York.
Well, I mean, I will.
say it, please.
I will.
Just an ongoing conversation that Alderman York and I have about the contingency fund line item. But I wouldn't necessarily go there, but you know, it does happen from time to time that we go over on various line items because something has come up that the council says, we want to do this. And what that means is, particularly for the general fund, there's a lot that ebbs and flows through the year. As long as at the end of the year, we're not over budget for the total, we're fine. And so you could say, we really want to go forward with this program, it makes sense. We'll hold back on that program. We haven't gotten to it yet. We're delayed for whatever reason with engineering. So there's ebbs and flows within the budget that can accommodate that. You know, as long as we're not talking about several million, and we're not. We're talking probably at most 20, 30,000, depending on when we really choose to implement it.
Thank you.
Alderman Lyman?
Not for tonight, but one of the things I was thinking about as we looked at the cost for comparing how to provide these services for seniors and disabled is that having started becoming a, Uber or rideshare, they're a lot less expensive in many instances, and I don't know what committee looks at it, but for those who are technologically savvy, those seniors or other users, it's a way for, it should at least be looked at, I guess, I would say.
Okay, Alderman York.
And just to kind of reinforce what the finance director says is, we do have a line item budgeted for senior transportation. So, and I believe, at least in one of the past couple, 3 years, we've been significantly over budget on that line item. So, I don't think we added any quote-unquote programs, but there was just more demand. So, I think the finance director did a great job of summing it up. We've got a line item there. If the expenses exceed the budgeted amount, we don't stop at the budgeted amount. We carefully monitor and do the best that we possibly can to make sure the program works, it achieves its results, everybody's happy, and then we look at it at the end of the year and say, gosh, we undershot it a little bit, we better change our budget.
Well, and ultimately, it's a bit of a gut feel from staff, whether or not to include this stuff. We're looking at a line item that may add 180,000 plus. Might be an interesting program, but I think staff recognizes that might be a pretty big pill to swallow. In general, isn't this just an expansion of our taxi subsidy within Elmhurst? So we have a taxi subsidy with Elmhurst where it's $1.50, $1.40. Residents can go anywhere in Elmhurst one way and get the cab back for another $1.40. Ride DuPage is basically same principle, but it expands. So if I wanted to ride out to the courthouse, that we would provide a subsidy to that. Maybe it's $5 for me, but the city picks up the remaining $17 or something of that nature. So I think it's good that we're looking at it, but I think on something like this, we go with staff's gut feel. Any additional comments or questions? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. Ride DuPage has been looked at for, as Director Gaston mentioned, probably since 2006 when it first was introduced to DuPage. Many communities have gone on. I don't know how many are still on. I don't know how many utilized it and then stopped utilizing it. I personally don't think that the research time would be significant, but as I initially spoke, I spoke to a partial budget line item to cover something like Ride DuPage, because I concur that it's not happening January 1st, so why budget for January 1st? Maybe we budget for June, mid-year, and then if we're under budget or don't use it, at least we're sending the message to the seniors of the community that they've been asking for it since 2006. They, being the Senior Citizens Commission, has come and spoken to the committee, the Public Affairs and Safety Committee, about this very item on multiple occasions. They've spoken with individual aldermen about this. I think, having it stated by the city manager that it will be discussed in committee this year is one step towards that. But actually putting it down in writing, which to me is the budget line item here of, say, $50,000 for a partial year, is appropriate. Getting the word out has always been a challenge. We now have a communications coordinator, and that is something that we could do. It's possible. We've shown that it's possible, at least from what I've heard from staff, in regards to when we added dollars for the trolley last minute, and we were able to roll that out in a month or two shortly thereafter. In these very budget discussions, we talked about the American Legion and the troubles they're in, and that's something that we've never talked about. And this is an issue that's been talked about for 9 years. But we're saying that we don't feel that we should put it in the budget, but we feel that we should put dollars for a fraternal organization in the budget. I think we need to support the seniors like we already shown that we support the American Legion by putting dollars into the budget and making that statement to all the seniors. We might not do it, or if we do it, maybe it is at the end of the year. But at least we're making that statement and taking a stand, saying, hey, we're going to take this seriously. You've asked for it for 9 years, and we're going to make a final decision within 2016. And if we decide to implement it, we have dollars there to implement it. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to, and I would look for staffs. I was going into it saying that it's going to be a new line item, but add $50,000 additional to, the human services on page 180. I don't know if we need to make a new line item or add it to one of the current existing line items.
So, Marilyn, is line item 6049, taxi subsidy, good enough to add? You think that's an appropriate place? Okay, Alderman Bram, they're giving us the nod, so a motion to increase line item 6049 from 85 to 135. Is that?
Accurate, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Alderman Wagner. Additional conversation. Alderman Toledo.
Yeah, contrary to the logic that was used in the discussion on the underpass and removal of the $150,000, I do think that there is some merit to adding in $50,000 in line with the logic used behind the American Legion, if this is going into committee. I do think there is a funding source. We could find the dollars if committee chooses and council chooses to do this program. But in terms of sending a message to an important and potentially underappreciated group of our citizens and our residents, I think that I would support increasing this budget by $50,000 for that reason. If it decides that the committee and the council doesn't think it's a good idea, we won't spend the money. The same logic with the process for the American Legion and the committee process for that. Thank you.
Alderman Palumsky, then I'll go to Alderman Leader.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question. I'm sorry if this has been answered, but the actual budget for 2014 was $106,000 or $107,000, but budgeted is $85,000 again going forward. Is that just more people were?
Can you ask what line item?
I'm sorry. Page 180, 6049, the seniors tax subsidy. Just curious, more people were using it, and if do you not see a trend to want to increase that anyway?
So why was 2014 so high, and why are we sticking with our 85,000 estimate?
Yes.
Staff was concerned when the numbers started getting high in 2014, and we really delved into what was going on, both with the use of that by our residents and the taxi companies that we were working with. And we are more closely auditing that now, and there was nothing illegal going on, but there certainly was maybe not quite following the guidelines that the taxi companies should have been following. So we've been trying to pull the reins in a little bit, not reducing service. That's not the issue, but it is an issue only in that there was some overuse, some abuse of the system, so to speak. So we have looked at many different angles to determine if that is a real cost or if it's something that we needed to get our arms around and control a little bit better. And we feel it's something that we needed to control a little bit better.
Alderman Leader.
I was going to say, as a representative of senior citizenry of Elmhurst, I'm going to support this.
Additional comments or questions? Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just questioned, I think the county's done a lot of work with Ride DuPage, obviously, but they should have quite a few of the details around the costs and stuff like that. Oh, I thought, sorry, Alderman, I thought Alderman York was pointing at the clock. Excuse me. Anyway, I don't think that the implementation will take as long. I think there's a lot of details out there that exist. At least I remember that from the Public Affairs and Safety Committee when I was actually on it.
That's where it would go, Public Affairs and Safety, I assume?
It would.
And curious, on that note, what's the timing on that? I think it says halfway through. Jesus, I'm blind.
Welcome.
Ben Franklin.
This thing on? During the first half of 2016. Yes? That's the plan
Yes.
for it coming to?
Yes.
Okay.
And one other comment I would make is that we've learned that Addison Township has become part of that as well, and that's a big help for us to implement this.
Okay. All right, so it's going to committee for review. Any other questions Alderman York.
I guess just so, maybe I'm the only person who isn't aware, it certainly wouldn't be the first time. What's the problem? I mean, what does Ride DuPage offer that the program we have doesn't? I mean,
Just outside of Elmhurst.
okay.
So if you want to ride within DuPage County but outside of Elmhurst,
We have a program.
we don't subsidize
I
that.
thought we had.
We have a program.
We do.
Pilot two, doesn't that take you?
We
outside?
do have a program, and that's a 50/50 cost split. Right now, as I think Mayor Morley already mentioned, our senior program, and also for disabled persons, it's $1.40 per ride, and then the city picks up the rest of the cost. That's where a lot of this increase in cost has come in. The resident cost has not changed since 1979 or so. But as far as Ride DuPage goes, it is a program that goes outside of Elmhurst. Elmhurst could have one subsidy for internal within Elmhurst, and then another one if you're going outside. When you reach the city limits, then the rate goes up. But it's also a service that provides better service to people who need assistance in terms of getting in and out of vehicles, who may be dependent on a wheelchair or a walker. That the vehicles that are used are more handicap accessible. So that's one of the big reasons that it was looked at before.
Okay. Thank you. All details the committee's going to vet. Good. Alderman Levin?
All right, so, because I remember we talked about this, but, so we, and I do know that what we pay in ours, because when I was on the Finance Committee, I actually was so naive as to suggest, don't we raise this every 30 years? And I got a lot of cold looks, and I thought, it's every 50 years we look at it. But, so is the Ride DuPage, I know that they list on their website, it's like $2 for the flagpole and $1 a mile. Is that what the passenger's paying, or is that what the sponsoring, like, Addison Township is paying?
My understanding is that's what the user would be paying. I mean, even back in 2006, 2007, when the council at that time recommended this program, that average ride in Elmhurst was going to go from $1.40 to $4.
Okay.
So it's a more costly program because of a higher level of service.
More costly to the user?
To the user.
But less costly to the city?
More costly to the city. It's a more expensive program overall than the programs we have, but it also was going to be more costly to the user by a substantial amount. But that being said, it hasn't changed in 30 years, 40 years.
All right, and I guess my last question is maybe to the movement of this is, so is the proposal to put in this extra money and then look at it, or just so it's available at some time? Because I get the feeling this has not been decided by any committee yet, whether it's finance or public affairs.
No, it hasn't been looked at by a committee. It's going to get looked at by a committee. I took Alderman Bram's motion to cover the portion that would fall into 2016, as Marilyn Gaston explained, if we chose to implement it. Okay? All right. All right.
Okay, so.
York, your motion to move on? No?
I have another comment.
Oh, okay, Alderman York, sorry.
Thank you.
Misread your.
So, I think we need to look at Ride DuPage, but I'm not in favor of adding money to the budget. We've got the vehicle, no pun intended, to do what we need to do within the budget if that becomes a possibility. But I want to explore it, but I'm not in favor of adding money.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right. Clerk Spencer, Alderman Bram would like to speak before I call for the vote.
I guess if I could ask Mr. Mayor what that vehicle is. My understanding of what was referenced before, the contingency fund, that wasn't for programs like this, and I don't want to get into the weeds, but if we're talking about a vehicle the vehicle is here to put it in a budget line item to have it documented that we could utilize those funds.
I think the vehicle we're talking about here is that the budget's a planning document.
Yes, sir.
But at any given time, via committee, ultimately through council, we can spend any money we want. So if we want to add it, this committee could say we should add it, and then it would come to council, and certainly part of committee's report will say, as the council recalls, we discussed this during our budget, and we want to move forward, and the money gets added that way. So, all right. Asked, does that satisfy your answer or question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments? Great. We have a motion before the committee of the whole to increase the line item from 85,000 to 135,000. Clerk Spencer.
Graham.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino, absent. Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
No.
Saludo.
Aye.
Ely's absent. Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
No.
Honquist.
No.
It looks like 9 ayes, 3 nays, and 2 absent.
9 ayes, 3 nays, motion carries. Sorry, Clerk Spencer, I think I stepped on you there. 9 ayes, 3 nays, motion carries. Line item on page 180, 60-49 increases by 50,000 to 135. All right, on to agenda, circle back number 7. Alderman Bram had a question about, I believe it was about the trolley. Page 186.
The rides and page trolley?
Ride Elmhurst trolley for
That one's
clarification.
4 times more expensive.
Alderman Bram, I believe additional information was provided, or have you had an opportunity to talk to staff, and do you have any additional questions or
Well, the only
comments?
additional questions is that we're proposing to maintain the $40,000 budget line item. It's getting late, I'm tongue-tied. And for 2016 and 17, it looks like. My question is, what we've been told is that we're expanding it to a 12-week trolley program compared to what we did in this fiscal year. That was supposed to be a pilot. I have not heard the report, and city manager has stated that that needs to be completed and communicated to committee and council, so I wait for that. But the question is, a pilot's a pilot. We should know at this point if it's successful or not. This pilot was central to South Elmhurst. We moved forward with it. I would like to, if we're going to put it in the budget again, to see it benefit all of the city of Elmhurst, including North Elmhurst, and to see dollars to match that compared to keeping it to the south central part of Elmhurst and only extending the program whatsoever. My question is, what do we need to do to expand it holistically throughout town instead of maintaining a quote-unquote pilot for another year?
Well, that's a good question. I would ask staff, I believe the 40,000, sorry, Danny, did you ever? Oh, I believe the 40,000 was to increase the length of time for the current route. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's what's in the budget, Alderman Bram.
Correct. That's what I stated, correct.
Well, I wasn't sure if it was anything beyond that, so I'm just clarifying. So your question is, really, if you want to expand it, either it would be, I would assume, appeal to committee, because the committee's going to look at it again, or a motion to put additional dollars in.
Correct.
So I think that's where we are.
Well, I guess I was looking for the, excuse me, I think I'm getting something here. The city manager's advice on how beneficial was the program. Obviously, it must have been beneficial, even though we don't have the, even though we don't have the stats for it or the report to review. Staff felt that it was good enough, if I may say, to put dollars put dollar amounts in the next fiscal year, so why isn't it good enough to expand throughout the city of Elmhurst? And if so, what dollar amount would we need to do to accomplish that?
City manager.
We had some conversation at committee, and the committee's feeling was strong enough that we should look at budgeting for an expanded time, the 12-week program. We did not talk about the routing or expanding the routing. I would think that's part of what the committee discussion would be, and of course the budgeted item would then depend on whether, if the route is expanded, whether that involves more than one trolley or additional services like that to warrant an increased budget. Certainly, the route could be changed to accommodate that, time changes with the pickups and whatnot, and that's something that I think the committee would want to vet before we get too far along.
Alderman Plumsky.
We did discuss this at committee without a full report, but we learned from staff that as the summer went on, while the trolley was running, with word of mouth and additional promotion, there were a lot more people riding the trolley, and it was primarily in the areas for entertainment. And I think that tied to the portion that we knew had to be allocated for visitor and tourism, not so much in the areas of town where people might be riding it for an errand or just for general transportation. That said, we are waiting for a full report, but did think that with increased funding, we would have the ability to expand the program. It'd be a benefit to the areas served, and I can't speak for the chair, but I would think the committee would be open to looking at other areas. One topic we did discuss was expanding this to outside of a window that would be a continuous, 10, 12 weeks, but also Art in the Park, which brings in over 10,000 visitors, and as Elmhurst distinguishes itself as being a cultural destination, it would help everybody, and with enough time, we can also work with staff to have the opportunities for selling ad space. So generally with staff's report, knowing it had been successful, if we do more planning, and if we expanded that, it will be more successful. So I think that there's the opportunity to look at the route, but I also think that if we set aside this funding, then we can get going on it too.
Alderman Dunn.
I am also a big proponent of having the route extended. I voiced my opinion there when this was in initial discussions and it was first shot down by council when the topic was initially brought up. I'm encouraged that the timing is expanded, and I think that's the right step right now. I would support the committee to continue to look at this after we run through it in 2016 with the intent of expanding the route in 2017. And I think the north side of Elmhurst could benefit greatly from it in that year. So I'm okay with how it's funded at this point, but I certainly would like to see that route expanded in the future. Thanks.
Other comments? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. It seems that there would be opportunities to consider expanding the route and staying within the existing budget. I think the pilot was a 3-day program. I assume the committee will be looking at which of those 3 days were the most utilized, and one opportunity would be to cut a day and expand the route and stay within the budget. So it seems like we have the opportunity within the existing budget. It seems like we should stay where we are until we hear otherwise from the committee.
Okay. Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I prefer the crawl, walk, run to this, because I think it's also in jeopardy of we're going to bite off more than we can chew, because we might have so many trolleys going on and doubling the budget that nobody's really riding them. It's going to be looked at negatively, I believe. I think ultimately it has to expand all of Elmhurst, but we're just coming off a pilot program, and now we want to expand it to the north side, which I think is going to happen and should happen, but I think we have to do it calculated. Now, can we do it in 2016? We might be able to. So I think we should stay the course on this, but we should probably put some money extra money in the budget to expand it. And I would ask the committee then to take another look at it, but I would rather we grow on a calculated basis than just going off and saying, okay, now we can expand this to the north side. Thank you.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you. I guess just to comment on some comments that were just made, you know, the biggest question I have is, why wait? We did a pilot. We said it was a pilot. We said it was a one-year pilot. You know, committee, I guess, discussed this, but a full port for the council to actually vet that issue wasn't done. So the committee made the decision along with staff to expand this to a 12-week program. That's what's stated in the budget. That's what the dollars are allocated for. So we're saying, Northside, you need to wait another year until we really determine, until we have 2 years of a pilot, to allow you to utilize this, to actually get to the entertainment uses that have been mentioned this evening. But the south side are allowed to utilize that, but the north side has to wait a second budgetary cycle. I'm just a little bit flabbergasted on why we're saying that this is needed for a 2-year cycle, or why we're making mention that, well, the budget dollars are adequate enough for expanding the route. We don't know if they are, because staff put together information to us saying that these dollars were allocated to expand the duration of the program, not to expand the route, to expand the duration of the program. So we're speculating, saying, well, these dollars are enough to maybe expand the route, maybe in 16, maybe in 17. The north side shouldn't wait to have access to the same entertainment district that has been stated and utilized by this trolley this past year for 2015. I'd like to make a motion at this time to add budgetary dollars, and since I don't have the exact dollar amount that it should be allocated, I will make a recommendation that line item on page 186, line item 30-98 should be increased in the upcoming fiscal year 50% to $60,000.
Okay. Motion to increase line item 6098 by 50%, adding 20,000 to the 40,000, $60,000. Do we have a second? I don't see a second. Motion fails without a second. Any additional conversation? Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I think the idea behind our committee request to expand the trolley and to put a dollar amount is that so once we decide and we just fully discuss, have a full report, the shape of the trolley plan, we will have dollars attached to it, unlike last time we didn't have the dollars attached to it. So perhaps it will be on the north side, perhaps it will be just Saturdays and 12 weeks. Maybe it will be 10 weeks and 2 days a weekend. I don't know, but we do know we want to expand it, and the days that we only designated that we were interested in moving on for sure, well, not even for sure, but very interested in was Art in the Park.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on. I'll remind council that even though I like to say we're going to end at 10:30, I really would like to get through circlebacks this evening. We're on number 8, page 192. I think this was circleback request by Alderman Dunn. Alderman Dunn?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This particular project idea came out of a referral from Alderman Bram, Alderman Wagner, Alderman Deuter, and myself regarding safety issues at the YMCA, parking issues at the YMCA. And that was put forth, the referral was put forth last March, with the intent that First Street was undergoing major reconstruction. We're all well aware of that project that was supposed to be done in 2015, but was pushed back due to the quarry project because of the quarry project and the parking garage, it was felt that that was not a good idea to be doing that and having such traffic on a new road. So with it being pushed to 2016, it was a great opportunity to make some small changes in the parking configuration at the Y to increase safety. And I attended the Public Affairs and Safety Committee meeting back in October. Kent Johnson was there, and he shared with the committee that there had been 15 accidents in the past year in that area, which was quite startling when I heard that. So what was decided that night by the committee was to evaluate this project in conjunction with another referral that was to look at the parking on First Street, and also in conjunction with the First Street reconstruction project. So right now, this particular project is estimated to be $90,000 to $100,000 incremental to the First Street construction project. It would have been a lot more that I'm told to do it on its own. So we're taking advantage and able to leverage that particular project to make these improvements. I spoke with the director of the YMCA a few weeks ago, Angie Flesh, and she was still very supportive of this particular project. It is a very highly utilized location, extreme amount of traffic going in and out, children, families, and with 15 accidents there, it's probably an area that we need to do something for. So I'm very supportive of this particular project. Was surprised that it wasn't in the budget. I see on the write-up that there are options. One was to pull it out of the roadway improvement line item and reduce the amount of construction done on residential streets, resurfacing done in 2016. The other alternative was to increase the funding on the roadway improvement line item. So at this point, I would make a motion to increase that particular line item by $100,000 to cover this particular project. It's still in a evaluation phase, along with the other the parking evaluation project on First Street. So my motion is to increase that line item by $100,000 for this particular
Line item on page 156, Alderman Dunn? Is that what you're talking about? I think that's what you're saying on
I'm just seeing a
8015.
on the summary.
Well, okay. Finance Director Gaston, you heard what Alderman Dunn had to say? I assume it's, you're not asking for a transfer, you're asking for an increase, is what I heard. So it was line item.
Page 156.
Page 156, line item 8015. Current budget is $4,254,900. And Alderman Dunn's motion is to increase that to $4,354,900. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Marilyn, does that make sense? Yes? Okay, so we have a motion by Alderman Dunn to increase that line item by $100,000. I need a second before we discuss. Alderman Kennedy. Alderman Dunn, I think, made a persuasive case. Any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
Dunn.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino, absent. Leader.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
Healy's absent. Levin.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. $100,000 will be added to line item 8015 in the 2016 budget. On to circle back number 9, 9 of 13, we're getting there. Alderman Bram asked for a recap of TIF 4 expenditures relating to the Han Street development. I know we have, staff provided us with a schedule. Alderman Bram, do you see that?
I do.
Okay, any additional questions or comments?
Nothing major, just one. If staff happens to know, I didn't have a chance to ask beforehand, what were the additional dollars for this development outside of TIF 4, i.e. TIF 1? Because I know it wasn't limited to TIF 4 expenditures, it was also TIF 1, since Han Street development's been going on for a little bit.
So what was spent when it was still in TIF 1 is your question, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Otherwise, I could take it offline.
I believe, Alderman Bram, you're referring to the property that was purchased?
I believe that was the only thing
I
that was
think that's
expended in
really
TIF
all
1.
the expenditures, and that was in the neighborhood of $7 million.
Other than that, no questions. Thank you, staff, for the additional information.
Great. Circle back number 10. Alderman York has a question about, I think it's contingency before I even get there.
Thank you. Yeah, Marilyn and I have been talking about this for a little while, and my initial thought was just to share my thought process, which won't make a lot of sense, I'm sure, but my initial thought was, you know, certainly in 2009, when we were where we were then, having a contingency amount in the budget was a good thing. I've done a little bit of research and reading some articles and budgeting practices and GASB and all those kinds of things. And contingency funds, I think, are important. I think they're probably a little bit more important when an entity or a municipality is struggling with general fund balances and where are things going to come from. I don't think that this is a particularly important line item in the budget at this time. I think it's something, as Marilyn and I have been discussing, something that we could do. Contingencies are described as things that are unforeseeable and not likely to happen. We tend to put storm-related expenses into those, and unfortunately, those are foreseeable and they do happen. I think I'm kind of more and we can certainly attack it as we go on in budgeting in the future, but I would be inclined to eliminate the contingency budget, but try and get it more specifically allocated to the departments in what seems to me would be more public works in this particular case, because it doesn't apply to the MUF since we're in the general fund here. That's kind of where I was going with this and doing some research, and just I wanted to bring it to council's attention. So I think at this point in time, I'll take a pass on making a motion, and I think we'll look at it in the Finance Committee and come back to City Council with a recommendation.
Okay. Any additional comments with regard to our contingency? Seeing none, we'll move on. Banking expenses, Alderman York, page 132.
I just wanted to make the City Council aware, and perhaps most people already are, that this particular line item continues to increase from year to year, and I won't say exponentially, but it's increasing at a high rate. And as credit cards charge not only the transaction fees, but I can't think of the name of them right now, but fees that are related to paying American Airlines, for example, for miles that you earn along with your purchases and everything. What's the term for that? Affinity fees, thank you. This has become quite a costly line item for the city of Elmhurst. And I think, well, I mean, we all know that if you want to pay your ComEd bill online with a credit card, you pay a surcharge. Certainly, more and more contractors and service providers that I'm working with, both professionally and personally, you show them a credit card and they go, oh yeah, we'll gladly take that, but I'm going to have to charge you 3.5% more to take this card. So long story short is the committee has already looked at this a number of times. I think that the city needs to look at this. Granted, it's a convenient way for people to pay. It's a costly way for people to pay, and for people who elect to do ACH withdrawals for their utility fees and so on and so forth are, in effect, financing the folks who want to use credit cards and get miles. So it's something that the committee is going to look at, and I just wanted everybody to be aware.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Number 12, Alderman Bram requested a list of permits. Is there a specific part in the budget this refers to, Jim, City Manager Grabowski? I assume that's what this,
It would, as it relates to the budget, it would be in the revenue section.
okay.
And that's an estimate that we use each year. I think the staff identified the list of all the permits for
it.
Alderman Bram, and perhaps he's shaking his head yes that he agrees.
Okay, Alderman Bram,
No further questions.
no further questions. Wow, we got 4 minutes left to handle the last one.
I'll utilize that time for that one.
You could
4 minutes allocated.
give your time back to the chair, right? Okay. Number 13, parking permit fees, CPI. Alderman Bram.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to discuss at length. The information that the daily rate was adjusted from $1.50 to $2 in 2010. And it says that there's no fee change recommended at this time. I think a 5-year span of keeping a parking fee the same is very gracious of the city of Elmhurst, and I would like to recommend that we, as a council or as a committee first and foremost, to look at increasing this fee in the fiscal year of 2016 to have that discussion and debate.
Does that go before finance? Yes. And what was it before the last increase? 17 years or something like that?
No,
It said 2000, the daily rate was adjusted in 2010.
The daily rate was in 2010, and before that, probably just earlier in 2000. No. I just don't remember before that when it was, but we do have to tie it to the Metra daily rate and get their approval because we received a lot of money from them.
Okay, all right. Alderman Dunn.
I just want to point out that I live on the north side of town, and there's quite a lot of folks that go up to Bensonville. The parking rate up there is $1.50. That's one of the reasons.
Okay. Any other comments before we wrap up our circle back meeting for this evening? So I think,
We got one.
Alderman Toledo.
Is this the appropriate time to talk about some non-circle back items before the meeting closes?
Sure, absolutely. It's, the agenda is about the city budget in general, so as long as
Thank
it's
you.
budget related.
It is budget related. I just wanted to express that I will not be in attendance at the meeting on December 21st. I will be out of town and will therefore not be able to make a vote on the budget at that time. I just wanted to state for the record that I am in support of this budget. I think it's a well-planned budget. I wanted to thank city staff and all the folks who have brought all of the various items to bear, and thank you for all the due process.
Great.
Thank you.
Staff, any other direction you need from council to prepare final budget to vote on 2 weeks from today? All right, before we wrap, I just want to say
10:30.
thanks. What?
10:30.
10:30. I want to say thanks to staff for all of their hard work. Excellent job. Thanks to the council for their due diligence and questions, and look forward to the vote. Motion to adjourn by Alderman York, second by Alderman Honquist. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.